Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody this morning. This is unbelievable. We have a bad problem. We have run out of seats, but that's always a good problem to have. So for those that don't know me, my name is Ryan Combs. I'm the Executive Director of the Research Triangle Regional Partnership. We're a 10-county economic development marketing organization, and our job is to market the region in external markets. And so we have put this thing together for you today, and I'll give you a little bit of background, but I do want to start off by thanking our sponsors for today. For the event, Duke Energy, the Research Triangle Park, and Wake County Economic Development have been tremendous sponsors. Our sponsor for this morning's Our event sponsor for this morning is LaChase. LaChase is a 75-year-old full-service construction firm serving clients in healthcare, education, industry, manufacturing, multifamily housing, and commercial markets. The company has had a presence in North Carolina for over 2 decades, and in the last 10 years, they've doubled their revenues, making them one of the top 10 ranked construction companies in the Triangle region. They're currently ranked in the top 10 among contractors in the Triangle region, and with a team of over 750 talented professionals, the firm has earned a reputation for quality, safety, and integrity on a wide range of projects, no matter the size and market. So let's give a minute to thank Marcus Tuttle, Seth London, and Jack Goodrich, who are here today from LaChase for sponsoring this event. I'd like to take just a quick moment and ask RTRP board members and our EDAC committee members to stand so we can recognize you as well from our 10 counties. And early on when we were organizing this, I thought the most important group we could have here is our public officials, because if we can't get the public policy right in economic development, the rest of this doesn't matter. So if you are an elected official, would you mind standing so we can recognize you as well? So I've been on my job at RTRP for just going on 2 years next month. And, I've learned, just like in everything else, everything in life is about relationships. And in economic development, not a more important relationship than the relationship between an economic developer and a site selection consultant. And so that's what we're doing here today. We've had a group of 6 national site selection consultants here yesterday. We took them all over the Triangle and took them to the State Carolina game last night, unfortunately. The bad guys won, Chancellor. But anyway, it was a great day. So in May, I went to an event called Consultant Connect Economics, and I met Ron Kitchens, who has put this group together. And I'd like Ron just to come up and say a few words to give you a little bit more background.
Thanks. So first thing, if you could, this is you. I can see all of you, and you can't see each other. So if you'll just turn to the person next to you and say, "Man, I forgot how good looking you are." So, all right, it's not a love affair here. We're just saying it now. Come on. So it is a huge privilege to be with you all this morning. Consultant Connect is built around the idea that the greatest force for change is a job. Let me repeat that. The greatest force for change is a job. There's no problem in this country, there's no problem in your community, there's no problem in your organization that can't be fixed by ensuring people that there are more and better jobs. So we're built around that premise of more and better jobs and about jobs changing people's lives. I grew up in abject poverty. I grew up as poor as you can grow up white in America. Neither of my parents finished the 8th grade. My father was killed in an industrial accident when he was 20 because he couldn't read the sign that said, "Don't do this." And the thing I knew my entire life is the people who had what I wanted all had one thing in common. They had a job. And so I've built my career around this idea, but I'm not the only one that believes that. Gallup tells us there's about 7 billion people on the planet. When you look at those people and you stratify them, there's 5 billion people on the planet between the ages of 16 and 65. So 5 billion people, 7 billion to 5 billion people. When you interview those people, and Gallup does their studies, and they say, what's the most important thing to you? More important than food, more important than shelter, more important than health care, more important than safety is a good job for themselves or their families. Now the problem is, of that 5 billion, 3 billion say that. There's 1.2 billion jobs on planet Earth today. So this morning when we all got up and forgot to be thankful for our jobs, there were 1.8 billion people who got up praying that they could have the jobs that we have. It's a war out there for jobs, and it's a war out there for talent. So those of us who are committed to growing our economies, to making sure that people have jobs so there's a tax base to take care of the infrastructure and the law enforcement and the public safety that's so important to all of us, to make sure we've got funding for education, know that we've got to ensure that our communities, our places, our states are the most competitive they can be. And one way to do that is ensure relationships. So we live by the motto that ignorance is the enemy. So those things that we don't know about are the things that will come back and bite us. And so one of those things that we see, and I've been working in economic development now for 35 years. Ran for city council in my hometown when I was 20 years old because there were no jobs for my friends to come back from college for. And so it consistently is that lack of communication and understanding what the process looks like is what damns us and damns communities to fail. And so the number one way that communities, we believe, can be successful is one, coming around success with each other, and this room shows that you certainly have that commitment. But the other one is to understand who's in the transaction. And site consultants, and depending on whose study you believe, somewhere between 60 and 80% of all deals that are done, significant deals done in America, have a site decision influencer in them. That's somebody who specializes in real estate, incentives, accounting, legal, those issues that they need an outside professional to advise them on. But too many communities and places treat that as an adversarial relationship. Well, you know, Zig Ziglar is famous for saying you can get anything you want in this world if you just help enough people get what they want. And we believe that economic development and that relationship with site selectors is critical. When you look at a group of site selectors, and last year, the average number of deals done by a site selector ranged from between 6 and 15 number of deals. So you take one person, you multiply them by that number, you pretty soon are getting a very large field of opportunities. But if you treat that as a friendship and you understand that for Joe to be successful, my community gets to be successful. And it's a direct correlation between that. So by bringing consultants into communities to understand that, and as we've debriefed along the way, the number of people who said, you know, I just didn't know. I was ignorant of what was going on in the Triangle. And I frankly, I thought I knew what was going on. My wife grew up in Chapel Hill. We regularly are back to visit family and friends. And yet the things that have transpired in the last 3 or 4 years are overwhelming. And you know, it's a bit like that couch in the basement. If you're like me, we've got this old couch in the basement that the puppies have been born on. There were too many high school parties that were held on this couch, and it is broken down, and it is ugly, and it smells, but we don't notice it anymore. And it just sits there. Well, good news is the same way. You begin to expect cranes in the sky, so it doesn't dawn on you how blessed you are to have that. And for us to be able to come in with fresh eyes, I can tell you, you all are tremendously blessed. And we want to thank you for allowing us to be here. And I'm going to ask that my site selection colleagues say a few words, introduce themselves, who they're with, and then they'll be back up for a panel in just a minute. So Chris, I'm standing in front of you, so I'm going to you.
Good morning. Can I go without this? Good morning. Chris Shastak from CBRE in Chicago. I have been with CB, co-leading our firm site selection practice for coming of 6 years, was at the Enemy before that at Jones Lang LaSalle for 4 years. I met my wife there, she still works there. I told a couple of people, my father-in-law opened an Avis and Young office in St. Louis, my brother-in-law works at Cushman, my wife's at JLL, my sister-in-law's at JLL, and I'm at CB, so such is life. Thrilled to be here. Our team just finished a really great project in Durham recently, great familiarity with the region, but I think spending a solid 2 days meeting a lot of new faces, seeing a lot of old friends has been great. I think the existing employer visits, and there are a couple questions, so I'm not going to just literally shoot it all right now because then I won't have anything else to talk about. But some of what we saw was, I think if you remember one thing would be, there's so much more promotion that could be taking place. There are things that I saw that were so obvious if you were here every day, but if you live in Chicago, you live in LA, or you live in Tulsa, and no one's telling you about it, or it's not blasted in your email, you just don't know. So, thrilled to be here, look forward to this conversation. Thanks for having us.
So Rachel, I'm turning it over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Roan. I'm based in New York. I work for Site Selection Group, which is a full-service site selection consulting company based out of Dallas. I am thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I have not been to this area in over a decade when I was a staff one at Ernst & Young. So just to see all of the changes and to get the new vibe of the downtown areas and everything that we've seen has just been so amazing. Thank you so much for having us.
Hi there, my name is Mina Hall. I'm a partner at True Partners Consulting based in Chicago, and I've been doing site selection for about 20 years. And I do all sorts of projects all across the country, from pharmaceuticals to manufacturing, from corporate headquarter relocations to anything, pretty much. But for me, I've done successfully located projects in North Carolina, but not specifically here in this region. So it was quite a nice surprise to come here and learn a lot more just the last 2 days, as everyone else has mentioned so far. So looking forward to our discussion later and getting to know more of you better.
Good morning. Oh, there you go. Good morning. Thanks for coming out. My name is Joe Gerino. I'm from the Newmark Knight Frank, New York office. A little bit about my background. I've been with Newmark about 5 years. We work on projects all over the country. What I'm seeing a lot of lately is software development and biotech, so it's perfect time to be here. My background is an attorney. Also served on my city council for 8 years, so I understand what some of your elected officials deal with, especially the mayors. I had a difficult one at times in a good way. He's now a congressman, believe it or not. What I picked up is you guys got a real cooperation or esprit de corps among your group, the entire region. And the hardest thing to get, and it's very rare, I only think there's a couple regions in the country that have that I can think of that really understand that a rising tide lifts all boats. So I'm happy to be here and thank you for having me.
Hi everyone, I'm Joe Vranich. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we recently moved there from the glorious state of California, the high-taxed, high-regulation state of California. This trip here has been quite an experience for me because, excuse me, I was at United Therapeutics yesterday and learned about what they're doing. And I've never had a pharmaceutical company or a medical device company as a client. It's just the way it's been. So I had a steeper learning curve than maybe somebody like Mina or Rachel, who maybe have done some of these kinds of things before. I learned so much I was afraid my head was going to explode. And I thought to myself, that's just an example of the kind of things I experienced in a learning experience here. This area is I always knew it was a good area. I always knew you had a good level of highly educated citizens, but it didn't really hit home until this trip. So I have to say, this is literally one of the best fam trips, familiarization trips, that I've ever been on, and I've been on them for about 10 years. Thank you all.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Charlie Ruby. I'm the managing director at the accounting firm Deloitte & Touche. Been at Deloitte for 15 years. Before that, spent 5 years at Ernst & Young and helped stand up KPMG's site selection practice in New York. Up until 2 weeks before Hurricane Florence came to visit us, I called New York City home. My company relocated me down to Wilmington, down by the beach, so I'm down with you all now. I also was out at Citrix yesterday, and the last time I was at Citrix was probably 3 or 4 years ago. I was surprised by the amount of growth around that complex. So things are really doing well, and I know I heard from my colleagues that there's been a lot of change, and I do think that's probably a real big secret that you all know locally. I'm a little bit familiar with it because I do the Raleigh and Charlotte marketplace and down the southeast, so I am. But I know for a fact that a lot of the companies up in the northeast still really haven't got a good grasp on what you're all doing.
We're going to have 2 panel discussions. We've got some great local CEOs and Chancellor Woodson to speak this morning, so we'll get this thing fired up. Following a short video message we put together for today, I'll invite up our first moderator, Jim Kane with the law firm Kilpatrick Townsend. Jim has spent over 20 years with the firm, and from 2005 to 2008, Jim served our nation with distinction as the U.S. Ambassador to Denmark. Jim returned to Kilpatrick Townsend in 2009, and he focuses his legal practice on advising corporate and government clients on strategies relating to growth, economic development, and community enhancement. All right, 1 second.
Businesses come here. People want to live here. The future workforce is here. Successful businesses are founded and thrive here. Research and innovation converge and fuel industry growth here. International partners embrace the business-friendly environment here. And we can get you anywhere. The Research Triangle region, what are you waiting for?
So, do we need this sound? Do we need these or not? We need these or not? We do need these.
We need it.
All right, so Chris and Joe and Mina and Rachel and Charlie, we are a lot better at relationships than we are at sound technology. We have a great panel this morning, and I'll invite my 4 distinguished panelists to come up, and I'll make introductions as you come up. My job is to introduce and to moderate. Chancellor, you sit here, and Sergey there, and everyone. My job is to moderate this morning, and I'll do that with very brief introductions, and then a few leading questions. We'll open it up to discussion and dialogue, and if we have time at the end, and I think, Ryan, we have 45 minutes, is that right? For this, we'll open up to questions from the audience. I will forewarn the panel members that if we have time, I'm going to ask you each at the end to give us no more than 140-character tweet of how you would describe the distinctive advantages of the Triangle region. So be thinking about that as I make these introductions. I'll start on my far left with Dr. Tony Atty. Dr. Atty is a world-class technology investor, entrepreneur, and executive with expertise in leadership in venture financing, business development, startup growth, and operations. He's founder and CEO at Phononic, the leading innovator of solid-state cooling and heating management solutions in the country. Backed by A-list Silicon Valley venture firms and blue-chip institutional investors. His own roots are in Southern California and New York, but in spite of all the Bay Area and Northeast connectivity, he chose the Triangle as the place to locate his company. Donald Thompson, when I first met Donald over a decade and a half ago, he was the president and CEO of iCubed, a software firm started by our friend Grant Willard.
And then NC State alum.
Yes, yes. A lot of NC State connectivity.
You think it did?
I led that company to be sold maybe in 2014, I think, and is now CEO of Walk West, a digital marketing agency focused on web design and development, social media content marketing, and issue advocacy, which was recently recognized by Inc. magazine as the fastest growing agency in North Carolina. To Donald's right is Sergey Aurora, president of Grifols North America, the global leader in plasma and related blood products. Grifols is listed on the Madrid Stock Exchange, and its U.S. headquarters and largest manufacturing facility is located in Clayton, which is maybe 20 miles from here, where Sergey oversees Grifols North American operations, which employ over 10,000 people, including over 2,000 here in the Triangle. Grifols has been one of North Carolina's greatest public-private success stories with a workforce training partnership with the community college system, which is globally renowned. And then to my left, Dr. Randy Woodson. Randy became the chancellor of North Carolina's largest university in 2010. In 9 short years, the chancellor and the faculty and leadership he has recruited have built the university of 34,000 students into one of America's preeminent institutions of research, translation, and commercialization, ranking number 6 in the country in commercialization agreements, number 2, I think, if you don't count those that have medical schools. With more than 70 industry and government partnerships on its nationally recognized Centennial campus where we sit today. He's undoubtedly one of the most powerful arrows in our economic development quiver here in North Carolina, and in my humble opinion, one of the best leaders of higher education in America. So let me start. Chancellor, and I'm sorry we're going to have to maybe pass the microphones as we have this dialogue. Chancellor, this is a remarkable campus here, hugely successful. I know, Rachel, it's been a while since you've been here, but it's amazing, isn't it, what's happened on this campus? Chancellor, so what's the secret to the success of this Centennial campus? How does this campus fit in with the greater mission of the university, and in particular, the remarkable public-private partnerships you've helped to establish here at Centennial campus?
Well, Jim, first let me start by saying, man, you look good today. I mean, doesn't he? Wow. And to start with, yes, we're a leading technology university, but we don't work on microphones. I think one of the keys here for future, these are not condenser microphones, so you need to hold them right here. That's part of it. Right? Am I right? All right. I'm a plant scientist, what I know. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Centennial Campus, welcome to our university. This is an interesting place in that about 30 years ago, the state really transferred this land to the university, but with the notion that we would develop it differently, not just as a college campus, but as a place for partnerships with the economic community. And so we have 76 corporate and government partners on our campus, from the National Security Agency to chemical companies, to software companies. LexisNexis, if you're a lawyer, you use all of their search engine. They have most of their technology base here on Centennial campus. The way I like to describe it is there are about 5,000 people that come to work on our campus every day that I don't have to pay. But the benefit to the state, the benefit to the university, and I think the benefit to the companies is that they're in this innovation ecosystem that's a college campus. And our students get the benefit of doing internships with the companies. Our faculty get the benefit of partnering with them in research. And I believe the companies and our nonprofit partners get the benefit of being surrounded by a lot of innovation. And one last example, we started 20 companies from this campus this year. And we're proud to be part of the UNC system, except in basketball. Hey, our team played really well. They fought really hard. But in any event, if you look at the number of startup companies, Out of the whole UNC system this year, it was 29. 20 of them came from this university. There are some tremendous examples here. SAS came out of NC State. Cree came out of NC State. A company called Locus Biosciences that announced a big deal just this week with Johnson & Johnson on CRISPR technology for genome editing. So there's a lot of interesting things on this campus, and a lot of it starts with this partnership on Centennial.
Chancellor, on that last point, let me just ask you this follow-up. So it appears that with NC State and with Duke and with UNC, there's been a pivot in the last several years to more aggressive, robust translation, commercialization, corporate partnerships. Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, I think universities, after the Bayh-Dole Act in the mid-'80s, all universities think that their technology is more valuable than it actually is. And no one's better at thinking their technology is valuable than the scientists that invented it. And it took a while for universities to understand that technology is not valuable until it gets commercialized. And there are too many deals that got blocked by universities thinking it was the blockbuster deal. And they held too many things in abeyance trying to get the best deal instead of getting it out the door. So I think when you look at Duke and Carolina and us and many other universities, we've come to the realization that the value of our discoveries are realized by the people commercializing them, and when that value is realized, we'll benefit from it. But we don't need to put such a high price tag on the technology up front to keep it out of the market. And that's why you've seen a big shift toward startup companies and other ways for us to realize value in the discoveries, and less on the upfront, what are you going to pay me for this discovery? Why don't we just try to find out together what it's worth? And I think that's made a big difference for us. And I think the same is true for Carolina and Duke in terms of getting things out into the marketplace.
Great. Thank you, Chancellor. Sergey, you run a big company. I want to ask you in a moment about your relationship with the state and local governments, your community workforce project. But first, you are not from here. How have you found life here in the Triangle?
I think you can tell by my accent, right? By the way, you look awesome also. Yeah, I'm from Barcelona, and I grew up there. I lived in LA for a while in the 90s, a completely different life than today. But in 2011, when we acquired our competitor was Salicris, we had the opportunity with my wife and my kids to come here. I have to tell you, to convince my wife to come here, it was tough at the beginning, especially the first day I was in Fayetteville street, and she was saying, what is this? I said, well, this is the city. It was a Sunday. Nobody was there. Compared to Barcelona, it was tough. But now she's in love with this. And we have enjoyed the quality of life of this place, and I think it's some place that, for me at least, has surprised me. I didn't think you can live, especially growing a family, in such a quality of life here. So.
And so in this area that you've grown to love, you and your wife, which we're pleased to hear, we have a historically low unemployment rate. You're hiring constantly at Grifols in Johnson County. How do you manage that challenge? How do you find the labor force you need? How do you train that labor force in your very sophisticated pharmaceutical manufacturing facility at Grifols?
Well, I think the story of the location where we are in Clayton, I think we have inherited from the past owners of this location a very, very good relationship with the county, especially with the community college. And through this community college, we have fit constantly the needs of our workers, let's say, our workforce. Also through the universities and the workforce and the talent that we have here. Obviously, this has changed quite a lot in the last 3 years when Grifols decided in 2016 that we were going to expand and double the capacity of this site, growing significantly in workforce and in investment. We didn't have the unemployment rates we had today, which is a good problem to have, but we also didn't have a neighbor next to us that was also expanding dramatically in a very good way, the workforce and the investments there. So with this scenario, really we have to really work harder. I mean, the story that was working before, that was feeding our needs, is not enough today. But I think we are lucky enough that I think the state, the county, the town has understood this, and there's a lot of programs and a lot of initiatives from many aspects, from the schools, from the college, from a liaison with the veterans, and this is really giving us the hope that we are going to be able to get what we need in the next years. But
Fantastic. Thank you, Sergey. Donald, nice to have you here. So Donald, you
Thank
have
you so
had
much.
background as a CEO, as an entrepreneur with a startup business or two, and now you mentor and counsel entrepreneurs, innovators. So you spend a lot of time with young people, millennials, those who worry about quality of life.
Who demand it.
Quality of life is such a critical factor in a lot of the site selection undertakings. So what is it about this region? How do we stack up in your experience on those factors related to quality of life and elements that the young generation is particularly looking for these days?
No, it's a phenomenal question, and again, thanks for having me. Quality of life is broken up in a couple components, but really, it's how do you integrate your personal and professional life, right? So you can get the short-term enjoyment, but you can also chase in a significant way your professional goals. And those of us that are a tad a little bit older, it was just work and grow and move the ladder, but that's not the workforce today. So you've got to really figure out how to blend that. So to be very specific, one of the things that our region does in a phenomenal way is the ability to integrate the needs of companies with the university infrastructure so that you get to know students and the talent you're trying to recruit on their way up. Not when you're trying to recruit them after they've graduated. It's too late because they have so many choices. And so in the this will be my third company on Centennial campus. So I've been located on Centennial campus since 2001. So I've seen it grow and blossom from site plans to kind of reality. I'm very fortunate to be on the board, advisory board for the computer science department of NC State University, and also in the board of science and technology of innovation, a part of the Department of Commerce. I say that not because of what I know, but what I see. And so I have visibility to see the curriculum enhancements that are going in around entrepreneurship, the curriculum enhancement on soft skills. Everyone has the hard skills required when they come out of college. What companies are looking for is how to build future leaders, and we have to promote that and sell that. From an entrepreneur standpoint, and then I'll move on, but I think it's really, really important to use a couple of examples. In the companies I've worked with here locally, 6 of the folks and engineers from NC State have now started their own business and represent the creation of 100+ jobs right here in Raleigh, North Carolina. The folks that acquired our first company, iCube, that was started by Grant Willard, and I just didn't ruin it when he turned it over to me. The first acquisition we did was with Adobe Systems from San Jose. So Adobe found the diamond in the rough. The second company we exited was a firm called KPIT out of Pune, India. They found the diamond in the rough. So just because it's not something that everybody sees doesn't mean that great companies aren't seeing the talent and innovation and coming and cherry picking. Our biggest challenge, I think, as a region is just how we market ourselves and really looking at the stories that we can tell and telling them in a visual and a compelling way so that people that are in the process of making these decisions have the best, most relevant information about us. And I think that's kind of our biggest challenge.
That's a good point. We'll come back to that in a moment because that's the point that Chris made earlier about how you market and position yourself. Thank you. Tony, so you've led Phononic about 10 years. You started it 10 years ago. You have a blue chip list of Silicon Valley venture capital backers, some very strong institutional investors. As I understand it, you have the ability to locate your company anywhere in the country, but you chose the Triangle region. So tell us why and how has that worked out for you?
I did. Good morning, everyone. The Phononic story is one we're proud to tell, particularly given the focus of this morning. Before I dive in, I'm sort of reminiscing, seeing a lot of friendly faces. Having our first official home ever at Phononic was on Centennial campus, and I remember when I moved here. I'm now a Carolina native by way of Manhattan, Buffalo, and Los Angeles, and the first thing my neighbors said to me was, "You don't have a lawnmower and you don't have a chainsaw." I still don't have the chainsaw after they saw me use one. But the story they told me was it's real simple because my affiliations for college are all over the place. And they said, we're going to make this real simple for you. If you want to be a respected man of the people, you will pull for NC State. If it's a true story. If you want to be a fine Southern gentleman, you can pull for Chapel Hill. But what you will not do as long as you live in this neighborhood is pull for Duke. So state has become my adopted university. To put Phononic into context relative to the promotion of our region, a couple of quick foundational elements of our story. So my background has covered research and development, venture capital investment, and entrepreneurial leadership of venture capital-backed companies. My bias, as the Chancellor mentioned, are those technologies that at their origins are often university incubated, where all you have, quite literally, aside from the scientist's belief, is a glimmer of greatness and a dream that it might work. Those are the toughest companies to finance and support. That was sort of my specialty. When you look at the origins of Phononic, semiconductor hardware innovation, not unlike solar, LED, which has its origins here in North Carolina, or the transistor, which built Silicon Valley, we're doing with semiconductor innovation for cooling and refrigeration in the same transformative way that's been done with semiconductor innovation elsewhere. That's a powerful disruptive story in and of itself. We're taking on a 200-year-old industry. The refrigeration freezer manufacturers ain't exactly lining up to be disrupted. It is a bold and audacious story, which is really what the underpinnings of venture capital in America were built upon. So the challenges I had as a virtual company for 18 months was not one of North Carolina versus Silicon Valley, but one of why are you even doing the semiconductor innovation in this continent when so much of that innovation is done in Asia and the Pacific Rim? So if you look at that development as a virtual company, the first 18 months were dominated by two things. Will the science work? And will Tony die in an airplane before the science is proven? Because that's effectively what I was doing. And roughly 18 months in, lo and behold, the technology started to work. And it was really my board of some of the finest Silicon Valley investors whose legacy investments built the Valley, who ultimately came to me and said, all right, kid, you're a first-time CEO. We want to see if you can build a company. Doing it this way ain't gonna work. What is your recommended plan? So right there as an entrepreneur, when you have many jobs every day of the week, I immediately became a site selection advisor. I had no real emotional ties to the area, although I did get a lawnmower as a gift, as a Christmas present. I had no family here. There was no infrastructure. I needed a home. So I went on a tour of North America at all the semiconductor centers of excellence, which included the Valley, Phoenix, Austin, Boston, and Raleigh-Durham. So I came in, not unlike many of you in the audience, with what's best for my company, not my quality of life. Because in the venture capital world, that's a low priority relative to the shareholder value I'm expected to deliver upon with their money. So having visited all of those centers, it's easy to talk about talent and talk about people and talk about the educational system. But in the semiconductor world, there's speed and then there's China speed, because that's what you're competing with. So when you look at the area here, the reason we chose RTP, aside from all the other important areas like talent, like skill set, like university support, it was speed and infrastructure. We got set up on Centennial campus with a fully built out Class 100 clean room in 3 months. I tried that at Harvard. They laughed me out. Phoenix came close, but I would have had to basically give up my firstborn and $1 gazillion to get it done. Centennial gave me an office, a clean room up and running in 3 months. Less than a year later, with our partners at Alexandria out in the western edge of RTP, we have what is now a 30,000 square foot semiconductor manufacturing hub that was brought online in 5 months. That is speed and delivery that you can't get or we couldn't find elsewhere in the country. So when we tell that story, as much as I'm proud to promote the region and the investors that we brought in from all over the world, I have to tell you, Jim, if I challenged a half a dozen of them to even tell you where Phononic was, they wouldn't know. But what they care about is we've delivered the metrics that deliver value for their invested dollars, and that's what counts.
So I want to get back to this issue about how we promote the region that you have both raised, as did Chris. So we recently had some disappointing news, you might say, with Amazon and with the Futures Command of the U.S. Army. In the post-mortem discussions of what happened there was a sense that this region is not a tech hub. Now, you're a technology company, you're a life science company, you're tech. Donald, what is the truth about our region? What are we? And if we are really more of a tech-focused region than the world realizes, how, getting back to Chris's question, how do we better tell that narrative?
So I'm particularly passionate about this subject, if not a bit controversial. I grew up in an area of the country that was disadvantaged, that has put on its shoulders the silver bullet, bring this company in, bring this project in, and it defines the success of our industry. The Valley is built on one of your portfolios succeeding versus 19 that fail. That is not a sustainable or a professional investment focus of the good and respected venture capital and institutional investors. So I never judge any region, based upon how it did on one particular project. It's the singles, it's the doubles, it's the triples over time that build up an ecosystem, which is why you want to locate your company in that particular area. Not whether you succeeded or failed on one particular project, because there's so many unique variables that only go into that one. Western New York is very proud that they landed the Solar City factory from Tesla. 24 people went to jail based upon that economic development program. To me, that's not a success for my hometown. Even as an Italian American with sort of a history in that area, that's not a success for my hometown. So I can tell you when I say, hey, this is what you got by inviting me, all right? So when I made my recommendation to our board, it was never one tech hub versus another tech hub. It's Phononic desires to build a globally disruptive multi-billion-dollar company. If Tony, as the CEO whom we trust, is telling us this is where it should be, let's get on board for the big win. So I understand the roles of the people in the audience, and I understand the PR that Amazon and others like it bring, but I tend to ignore that and look at the foundation upon which the region's built, and this is incredibly powerful.
Tony, let me start by saying, you know, you're a man of the people now. You said ain't twice. So you're in, brother. You're in.
I'm not quite at y'all. I'm getting there.
We don't need y'all. We got the Cary area for confined Yankees.
I'm not going to try to follow that. I'll just add a little commentary. But I like success stories. So if you think about startups and growth, and you think about how difficult it is for African American founders to raise money nationally, and you think about how few African American companies in the history of venture capital that have raised over $1 million, that number is less than 50. One of those companies out of the Google Founder Exchange launched in the American Underground, a company called Spoke Hub, that I'll be joining the board in a minute, raised $2 million. It's right in Durham, right? So if you think about the success stories that are here and we promote them, they then fertilize for the bigger wins down the stream. And I think to your point, and Amazon, like, I don't know if it's good or bad that we won that. Maybe it's a phenomenal learning. Maybe our infrastructure wasn't ready for the grand slam. Maybe our infrastructure is learning that, so that we now take the startups that are in the area and realize, wait a minute, there's a investor, it's a good friend of mine now, his name is David Gardner. And just look him up. He's got a book called The Startup Hats. But here's the thing. He's 17 for 17 in venture investments that have been exited. He lives right here in Cary. He has a little startup hub right off of the main street in Cary, and like, I think it's super cool every time I ask him for a cup of coffee, and he says yes, right? But we should know his name. He should be invited to things like this. He won't say no, but he's right here in Cary. Now, those of us in kind of that small circle of water know, but there's reasons that people choose here and stay here, and the difference is there's a company I'm invested in. The founder moved from Syracuse. He did the same thing you did, not a big company. Started with 5 people. They raised about $7.5 million. They picked us over Silicon Valley. Why? Because it's $250,000 for a software engineer that's good in Silicon Valley. And you can get a good engineer here for $110,000. Those are business economics that need to be in the site planning, because guess what? Company big or small, talent is expensive. We just, and again, I apologize, it's not a bragging standpoint. We're a little bitty agency, Walk West, but we're swinging for the fences trying to grow big, right? So we just signed a deal with a multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical company. to launch one of their new drugs. One of the things they said was, you're giving us the same quality of delivery as Edelman, and you're charging a reasonable rate. Not only are we gonna let you work with us on this project, but if you do well, we've got 50 other drugs that we're gonna let you pitch against. They're now looking at the region and saying, why do I need to spend my marketing dollars in New York, in LA, in Boston, when the price inflation doesn't equate to better value? You want to talk about quality of life with millennials? Try to get somebody that's at an average salary to buy a house in these big cities. There's no quality of life. You live in a box. That's why people like to do stuff outside, because why go home? It's a box, right? My friend Grant Willard said, hey, do you want to move to San Jose to go with the Adobe acquisition? I was like, no. They don't value my talent enough where I can live outside of a box. It might be a pretty box with air conditioning and cable, but it's a box. So when you're recruiting folks in, guess what? We hired a guy, his name's Chris, from an agency in LA. He moved his family to Raleigh, North Carolina, signed on with Walk West, because for what we're doing and growing, he can have 3 to 4 times the house. Quality of life for his kids is better. Private schools here are just as good. He can have a Tesla instead of a regular car. There's all different ways that you can equate the business value of why Raleigh. We just got to put it in a sizzle reel. Who goes to a movie based on a movie trailer? We all do. Well, where's our movie trailer that goes viral? So that people know us by name, know us by reputation, know us by results. Those are the things, not just by name, by reputation, by results. When you put those things together, I mean, we can crush it out. And I'm excited to be a part of it.
So I think it was Joe who mentioned the esprit de corps amongst the economic developers in the region. Chancellor, I want to talk for a minute about the esprit de corps among universities, because the universities play a critical role in the agency of economic development. Can you comment about how the 3 universities work together, how they engage, for example, without giving us any confidential information, with discussions when we have the Amazons or the Apples or the big targets presented to us by the consultants?
Yeah, I think that there's a long history of our engaging collectively for economic development. A lot of it comes through the fact that all 3 of the universities are somewhat considered owners of RTP. And we're all on the foundation board for Research Triangle Foundation. We all know one another, collaborate on, we don't like each other on basketball, to be clear. But, when you look at the collaboration, when you ask our faculty, who do you collaborate with most in your science? Typically, NC State, Carolina, and Duke have the most grants together and the most publications together of any other university. So proximity matters. We have unique strengths. NC State is a big engineering and technology center. Carolina and Duke have tremendous medical centers that we benefit from through partnerships. But we talk, and everyone knows in the economic development community here that when you start to talk about recruiting a company or retaining a company or growing a company, we're going to be together on it as 3 major research universities. So it's not, it comes second nature to us.
And on the international scope, and I'll ask Sergey this as well, you've been bucking a trend at NC State of fewer international students coming to the U.S. for higher education. You've done really well. Comment on that, and then Sergey, if you would pick up on that and comment about the receptivity of the Triangle region for international companies who want to come to the U.S.
Yeah, so, I tell our alumni, we've been international since the beginning. Our first graduating class in 1889, out of 12 people, had 2 men from Japan. So international has been part of our university, and the same is true for Carolina and Duke since our founding. Now, there's a lot of concern in the world now about immigration and about immigration reform and the impact it could have on opportunities for international students once they graduate from our university. So we are starting to see an impact. It's not policy changes, but it is perception. And we're starting to see growth in international students in Australia, in Canada and staying home in China, not as much in India. But you're right, we've bucked the trend. And when you look at NC State, out of our 10,000 graduate students, 3,887 are from somewhere outside of this country, mostly China, India, South Korea, and surprisingly, this would shock many of you, the Middle East in general, but Iran specifically. So we get a lot of international talent here, and much of it stays in this country and begins to work for the companies that are here and starts companies. So it's something that as a country I hope we never lose, because the higher education system in America has been and is still the envy of the world. But we can lose it if we don't take care of the fact that this is the envy of the world.
Have you ever thought about running for office?
I sort of have. I mean,
So the international front, how does this region relate to international companies seeking U.S. locations?
Well, for Grifols, since we started to be going outside of Spain, it was in the 90s, the U.S. was our main market and our main focus, because of what we handle with the plasma and we started to be present in Miami in the late 90s. Then we went to LA, we had a plant there, we acquired a competitor, and then we have also locations in Texas, in Emeryville, in the Bay Area, and in San Diego. And by far, and I just was thinking, well, you asked this question, where we feel more supported is this region. And I had the CEOs coming before Christmas, and we had a meeting with the Secretary Tony Copeland, and they were sharing very honestly to him what I feel, that we feel that since we have been here, we have been really well supported in all aspects, from what the business needs for growth and for making sure that you take the right decisions to invest in this place. So I think we are blessed on being in this place and
Wonderful.
The way we take care.
All right, given the high sign, we have 5 to 7 minutes. I want to open it up for questions, particularly if Mina or Rachel or Charlie or Joe or Chris have any questions for this panel. You'll have a chance in a moment to have your own panel. But if you have questions for this panel or anyone else in the audience who has a question they think might be pertinent for our site selection consultants, raise your hand. Rachel, you're back. Don't you want to ask a question of the Chancellor?
Actually, I have a question about the international hiring. With the visa legislation changing, are you having a harder time recruiting talent and getting them visas to come and work in your facilities here? Or has it not been really an impact?
And sort of repeat the question, Tony.
So the question was international hiring or bringing in non-citizens under visas. I don't know if we've had a problem. If we find talent and they have a visa issue, Phononic tends to go to bat for them and sponsor them for a green card or whatever work-related requirements are needed. My bigger challenge has been hiring international employees in international areas. It's actually sometimes easier for me to sponsor someone's visa to work here than it is for me to hire a Chinese national or a Taiwanese national over in Asia, if you can believe it. But I think we've done real well at Phononic with the local talent. I mean, gosh, I got more than 24 NC State kids that work for us, and they're fantastic. So we've done real well with the talent pipeline. It's a cost of business. So, you know, if someone adds value, you recognize it, you sponsor, but I can't say I've lost someone because the visa system was sort of screwed up.
All right. The part of this that I'm most worried about is that we have a policy in our country now for STEM graduates. Graduates of technology fields, that once they get their degree, they can automatically stay in the country for 2 more years for advanced training. And that's a phenomenal recruiting tool to get students to come here. And it's a great way for companies to explore the talent and to have them as a part of their workforce for a period of time. And then if they prove to be the valuable employee, they sponsor them for a green card. So I think that's been a very important tool in the tool chest for the U.S., and I hope we don't lose it. So that's my political statement today. But we're seeing people get success when they're going after a green card. It just takes a while.
Thanks.
Okay, this is the Twitter moment. So, 140 characters or less, give or take, the distinctive attributes of the Triangle region. What is that? What's that marketing slogan? What would you want our guests to know about the Triangle region? I gave you a fair warning. You look like you're thinking about it, Donald. I'm going to call on you first because you're thinking so hard.
I'd simply say diamond in the rough and worth further exploration. And when you actually take the time to do your research, you'll have something special to bring your clients that'll help your portfolio, because you'll be bringing them something different and more powerful.
140 with a footnote. That's okay.
Entrepreneur, I'm tough on directions.
Yeah, right, yeah, exactly. And I don't say anything in 140 characters or less. I see resourceful, scrappy, entrepreneurial, enthusiastic.
That's good. Wow, that's good. That's good. I must have been writing this down. There, Dick?
I would say great business environment and good quality of life.
Chancellor?
Innovative, supportive, and this is off the Twitter now. What I've seen in the community, among the entrepreneurial community in the region, is how much mutual support there is among companies, among CEOs, and so it's a very supportive environment. I don't tweet because clearly you've heard me enough today to know that if I did, it'd be a problem.
Please join me in thanking our panel.